Welcome to the 12 Days of Edition Wars. In this year's series, we will be taking a deep dive into the iconic monsters of D&D. On this, the 5th day of Edition Wars, my DM gave to me the Hook Horror. I am Sam Dillon, your host, here with my other lovely host, Brandis Stoddard. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Sam.
Excellent.
Great to be here tonight.
Yeah, good. It's wonderful to be talking to you. It is snowing outside, and a storm is coming in. And you know what? It's okay, because I'm inside and I'm warm, so that's good.
You're saying the weather outside is frightful?
It is. And I don't know any of the other words to that song, so there you go. So otherwise I would sing along, but I cannot. So folks, today we are going to look at the Hook Horror. And as you know, part of my desire to do this series stems from just looking at the evolution of creatures throughout the editions. And the majority of creatures that I think of had their start early in the game. And so we end up, starting with me going from, original D&D, white box D&D, all the way through, through all the basics up through, first edition and then second edition. And then Brandis takes over and talks about third edition. And then we both kind of talk about fourth edition. And Brandis takes over again, talks about fifth edition. And here's the thing. I can't really do that with the Hook Horror because it has this interesting history. So normally I would start you in the bygone days of 1976 with the 3 little brown books. And I can't because there's no Hook Horror in those. And then I would move from those to the Holmes, the classic Holmes basic set, which has a red dragon on the front and takes you from first to third level and then tells you to go play AD&D first edition. And I can't do that because there's no Hook Horror in there. And then I take you to BX, my, Cook Marsh basic expert set, right? Moldvay, right? Tom Moldvay did that red cover book. And I can't do that because there's no Hook Horror in those. And then we go to my beloved Beckme. And I'm almost not able to actually talk about it in my beloved Beckme because it's not in the rule cyclopedia. And it doesn't show up until the master set. So let me take you on this journey. And I'm not starting with basic D&D. I'm going to start with first edition AD&D, and then we're going to go backwards a couple of years, and then we'll go forward to second edition. All right. And the reason I have to start with first edition, this stuff. Okay, I'm such a geek. I'm a nerd, right? I'm like thrilled doing this, right? Because I love this. This is one of my favorite creatures, but it's really interesting that it's one of my favorites because it's really not in Beckme, and Beckme was, that my first love, right? So how did this happen? Well, it turns out that the Hook Horror is from the Fiend Folio. And in case you don't know, dear listener, the Fiend Folio, actually, a lot of the creatures that are in there, if not all of them, I don't actually know what percentage, actually are from a feature column that was written for White Dwarf Magazine back in the late 70s and early 80s, when White Dwarf Magazine was like early Dragon Magazine. It wasn't just Warhammer miniatures based, it had all kinds of different articles from all kinds of different games. They had Call of Cthulhu articles, they had D&D articles, they had all sorts of things, right? And one of the articles that they had, I think, was called Fiend Factory or something like that, and they would stat up these weird creatures. And those were so good that after several articles of that, they ended up compiling them. And that's actually the basis for the first edition Fiend Folio. And so our Hook Horror actually was printed in White Dwarf Magazine number 12 back in like 1980 or something. And it made it into the Fiend Folio, which was published, I think actually the Fiend Folio was 1981. So I think the article was published in like 79 or 80, the article with Hook Horror. And then in 81, the Fiend Folio gets published as a hardcover book for first edition AD&D. And this is what it says about our Hook Horror, okay? It says frequency appearing. It's rare. Number appearing is 2 to 12. So it's rare, but there's a lot of them, right? They nest in hives, kind of. Low armor class of 3, decent movement, 5 hit dice, decent treasure. Gets 2 attacks because it has these 2 enormous claws, right? It has standard magic resistance. There's no like psionic ability here. There's no special attack or defense. It's just a really creepy underground creature. It's referred to as a vulture man, right? Because it has like the head of a vulture, and then it's got these weird hooks as its arms, okay, or as its hands, right? It's tall. It's tall, so it's like 9 feet tall. So it qualifies as a large creature in first edition AD&D parlance, okay. And so here's how it describes it. It says, this is a large, powerful biped. Hook horrors have vulture-like heads and a hard-plated exoskeleton, which is mottled gray in color. They inhabit deep underground corridors and chambers. Though their vision is very poor, their hearing is extremely acute, and there is only a 10% chance of surprising a hook horror. The creature's arms end in sharp, hook-like talons, which it uses in melee, each inflicting 1 to 8 hit points of damage. A hook horror cannot speak, but communicates with others of its kind by making clacking noises with the exoskeleton, an eerie sound which can alarm the unwary as it echoes around dungeon corridors. So, the reason that I love this creature, okay, is not the amazing art.
The art is doing the best it can.
The art's doing its job.
This time in fantasy art, all right?
Mm-hmm. I'm not knocking
really
the art.
hard.
It's just not the reason why I'm. It's midline, right? It's mid level. It's mediocre. Okay, like for line art of the time, right? Fine. The reason I love it, though, is because it click-clacks with its exoskeleton like an insect. It has a vulture head, and it has hooks for hands. Just one hook, though, so it doesn't even like have opposable like hook pincers. It's just a hook, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that makes noise too. It can actually, if it's climbing on walls or something, it can like, the way that I run it, this is how I always did it. It should be a really scary creature. So it's like putting its claws into little crevices to help, climb around. Or it's, as it walks, I always think of it as having really, really long arms. So it's kind of, it's a hook that's on its hand. Is kind of either dragging across the ground or it's touching the ground as it locomotes, right? So it's making this weird like clicky clacky, sound with the hooks, but also it has this exoskeleton. So of course I'm a sensory biologist, right? So for me, I'm like, oh, this is really cool, right? I love it when there's some kind of sensory component that makes it really, really creepy. So I immediately fell in love with this creature. But here's the thing. It doesn't show up in regular BECME, right? So how did it get, what is this about? How did it get from Fiend Folio, which was published in 1980, how did it get into BECME, right? Into the basic expert, right? I'm talking about the Frank Mincer, red, blue, teal, black, and gold books, right? Well, it's not in the red. It's not in the basic. It's not in the expert. It's not in the teal, right, companion series. It shows up in the Master's book. So let's take a look at the Master's book and see what it says. The Master's book has the DM book, part of the set, has this listing of creatures, okay? Because it's talking about planes and the prime plane and all these other things. And it has this list of creatures called other monsters, like things that it knows exist and it wants to give you the stats for them and tell you where they came from. But, but they're not featured in this book. It's kind of an index in a way. And it says, the following list gives game statistics for various monsters not described in the revised rule sets. These creatures were introduced in earlier unrevised versions, so in other words, books that are so obscure you can't get them anymore, or in separate published adventures. And then it tells you, and by this listing, you're going to see where it's published. So if we go down to the Hook Horror, you find that the Hook Horror is a monster, and look, it still has your trademark there, your lovely trademark, Hook Horror.
Sure.
Ian.
Why?
Well, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why in a second. I'm getting there. I'm
Okay,
getting there.
sure.
Don't.
Okay, okay.
So here's the thing. So it's an AC2, so it's a slightly better AC than what we saw in the Fiend Folio. HD5, that's the same, two claws and one beak attack. So it gave it an extra attack. Okay, so it's kind of better than than the AD&D version in that way. The 1 to 8 is the claws, and then the beak does 3 to 18. It does 3d6 damage. Okay, movement's the same. It has morale score, which the Fiend Folio doesn't have. It has really good hearing, and it's surprised only at 10%. So it's very much the similar thing. This is really the reduced. So there's no description here because it's just a reduced listing, so that if you wanted to use it, you can. Now, so that made me go, okay, well, where did this come from? I actually already knew, but I just hadn't, like, it didn't hit me like when I was doing the research for this, I was thinking, how did I first see this in BECME or Fiend Folio? How did, like, what happened here, right? So here's the thing. XL1 is not like the size of the creature. That's the listing that tells you where this comes from. And XL1 is an adventure module named Quest for the Heartstone. And Quest for the Heartstone is an adventure module that is the designation XL1 means expert licensed product. Okay, it's the only actual XL module that was made for BECME for the basic D&D line at the time. I think they were going to make more and then they just didn't, or something, right? They did make some other basic versions. This is around the same time as they were making the one-on-one basic modules, because they were trying to really ramp up getting new players, and especially younger players, right? The D&D cartoon was happening and all that stuff. So here's the thing. This module features Strongheart and Warduke. Okay? And Strongheart and Warduke are individual characters that were produced by LJN Toys in conjunction with a licensing agreement with TSR for Dungeons and Dragons. So they created the LJN line of toys. There was a Dragon, there was Warduke, there's a whole bunch of them actually, and one of them that they produced was a hook horror.
Huh.
So this module, which was published in 1984. Okay, so remember, the White Dwarf that introduced hook horrors at first was in like 79 or 80. The Fiend Folio, it made it into that compilation, which was published in 1980 for first edition AD&D. And previous to that, the hook horror was not in any other edition. But then they inked the deal with LJN, and one of the creatures that they chose was the hook horror. So they then had
wild
because
choice.
because they decided to write this up for basic, right, for the expert line of the basic licensed whatever. They used the hook horror in this particular. I implore you, audience, to go and look up the hook horror toy. If you're watching, I'm showing it on the screen. This is the hook horror that was produced by LJN. And it's a glorious work of it actually closely matches the art from the Fiend Folio, to be perfectly honest. Like
Yeah.
it's a very good 3-dimensional reproduction of that 2D line art from the Fiend Folio. And so that's why this thing ended up in BECME, because they inked that deal and then they made hook horrors. So here is the hook horror entry from that book, published in 1984. So the hook horror has already been in existence for 4 years, but now there's a physical manifestation of it in the form of an action figure that looks like a hook horror. That's why you see the trademark symbol on the hook horror name everywhere that you see it, because the licensing made it so that they now have to keep claiming their trademark because otherwise the LJN company could claim it, right?
Yeah,
So
I'd just like to point out they're also, I think, pretty clearly concerned that Maurice Sendak will claim it
right, yes, he could
because these
exactly.
guys look straight out of where the wild things
Yes,
are.
they do. Yes, absolutely. Um, there's some speculation that it actually came out of one of Fritz Lieber's Fafhrd and Grey Mouser books. There's a
Nice.
creature in there that They think that was part of the inspiration for the original, like, I don't want to say conversion. It wasn't a conversion of that thing that's described specifically, but there's just some elements in it that match. So they think that someone took inspiration from that book and then wrote it up for the White Dwarf. I don't remember who wrote it for the White Dwarf. And then that ended up, of course, snowballing into it being in all these products, right? So let's take a look at the hook horror here. The hook horror here has the same exact stats as what I just read you from the master's book, because the master's listing in that master's book index is just coming right from this. The difference is this one has a description, whereas the one in the master's book is just the stat line. So this says, this large, powerful creature has a vulture-like head and thick rhino-like skin. Its arms end in one sharp hooking talon, and it lives mostly in underground dungeons and caverns. The hook horror's vision is poor, but its hearing is extremely good. You can only surprise it on a 1 in 10. Hook horrors do not speak, but communicate with each other by making code-like clicking noises with their talons. See, that's different from what's in the Fiend Folio. Fiend Folio was like with their exoskeletons. Now it's with their talons, right? Which might be where I got it from initially, which is why I think about that, right? And it ends with this poor line: hook horrors are not very smart.
Rude.
I know.
They're trying so hard. I mean, you try having basically no particularly useful appendages.
Exactly. I mean, come on. It's rough. It's rough.
I would like to throw out some alternate canon for the hook horror, but I'll let you continue. So I would really have to lean into the vulture-headed thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a common feature in D&D monsters, so it seems like a waste to not connect hook horrors to the one other major vulture-headed thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Either rocks come from hook horrors or hook horrors come from rocks.
Right.
Like someone tried to graft a rock into a human soul or something and accidentally made hook horrors. That'd be pretty awful and cool.
Right. And with the prevalence of how many creatures are listed in, for example, the first edition Monster Manual that literally say, oh, we think they suspect that there was some wizard experimenting with animals and it created this. Like the owlbear does that, the Bulette does that, right? Like all these things. But the hook horror, no. Yeah. Evil Wizard did it. Yeah, that's exactly. So let's talk about how we got here. So there was an article in White Dwarf. It got turned into a piece for the Fiend Folio. That was 1980. And then we fast forward a couple of years, and D&D inks a deal. TSR inks a deal with LJN. They make toys. They want to support that, so they create now TSR again now creates this Quest for the Heartstone module. And I just want to I want to say this. This has a couple of different main regions that it has you go and adventure in. One of the areas it's titled Adventure in the Heart of the Cliff. I just want to point this out. So there's this area that's called the Tunnels of Death, okay? And it's got traps and it's got these different things. And when you get to Area 26, it's the hook horror layers, right? And you meet 6 hook horrors, and then you go to a different room, and then you meet 5 hook horrors, and then you go to a different room, and you meet 3 more hook horrors. It's like room after room after room of hook horror. And every time that it mentions these, it has this little paragraph that says, "You may use the hook horror TM monster produced by LJN Toys Limited for this encounter."
Yeah, you can know exactly how that contract was written.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
No confusion.
No confusion. So it's a quaint attempt at a crossover marketing, and whatever. So I think it's funny now. At the time, I mean, I had this module, and it obviously made an impression on me because I've loved hook horrors for a really long time. That's why they're on this list, right? Because I love them. But I never really sort of, as an adult, went back and looked at, hey, how come I like those, and let me look into their history until we decided to put them into this series. So so I'm appreciating that. So they're in the master book. The master book was produced. The Quest for the Heartstone was produced. What's funny is they did not bother to carry over these stats into the Rules Cyclopedia. So when they ended the Beckme line and they combined it all into one giant rule book and they created the creature section for that, they didn't even bring over the hook horror. So, sad. sad face, Sam sad face.
Yeah.
And that there you have it. So then we can move to second edition whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So, I mean, my personal history with hook horrors starts in the second edition era, with the hook horror that shows up in Exile, the second Drizzt novel in
Mm,
Timeline.
okay.
Not the second one Salvatore wrote, right, but the
Right.
second Timeline. And it's an interesting, compelling character there. Um, you know, to me as I was probably 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
So, it stuck around in my memory. Uh, but I will talk about how I've used hook horrors once we get to fifth edition.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's move to second edition then. All this art from the Fiend Folio to the Heartstone Quest for the Heartstone art to I mean there's no art in the Beckme book, so this to the actual action figure, right? It's all very cohesive, and then we get to the art for the hook horror in AD&D 2E, and it becomes very much more insect like. I think they took the idea of the exoskeleton and applied it not only to sort of the coating on the creature, but to the possible like actual shape of the creature. It now has almost like a beetle-like carapace on the back kind of thing.
Yep.
It's an interesting direction to go. It's still really gross looking, right? It's still really terrifying, so I don't mind it.
Yeah, I
I
personally really like the like ridge of spikes on its back.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, because the thing is, like, if you've ever seen like those really huge like dung beetles, right?
yeah,
That like have the giant horns. I mean, it's just a beetle, so they're not giant compared to us, but compared to other bugs, those things are enormous. And so that's kind of what this evokes for me is these huge horns and spikes and stuff coming off of the carapace. It's really gross looking and really cool. I mean, when I say gross, I say it as a term of endearment, just so you know.
yeah,
Like when you draw a picture of a creature and I say it's gross, I really like it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so let's take a peek at the stats first. Climate or terrain, any subterranean, rare frequency still. They have clan-like organization. They have any activity cycle, so they don't just become active in the day or night. They are omnivores. Their intelligence is low. It did kind of say that they're not very smart. And 2 to 12, that's the same number appearing that we've seen in all of these. Armor class is 3, that's carried over from first edition. Movement's the same as first edition. Hit dice the same. We now have a THACO of 15, which actually calculates out to the same. This one retains its 3 attacks rather than just having the 2 attacks from AD&D. So they kind of, that's a addition from the basic version. The damage is different though. The 1d8 has always been the damage of the claw of the hooks, right? But the 2 to 12 here is the bite, I guess, because that's actually coming from that quest for the Heartstone as well. Same size and basic same XP value. And so let's see what it says about what it looks like. It says the hook horror bipedal underground dwelling monster. It looks like a cross between a vulture and a man with hooks instead of hands. But I gotta say that is not what the image looks like, right? That's the text, but that's not the image. The image looks like a bug with a slightly vulture-like head. That's not the same as saying it's a man with hooks instead of hands and with a vulture head, right?
Yep.
It stands 9 feet tall, weighs 350 pounds, has tough mottled gray exoskeleton like that of an insect, and that's where the image starts to morph into more matching it. Its front limbs end in 12-inch long. Now we get a size for the hooks, 12-inch long hooks. And its legs end in feet that have 3 small hooks, like long, sharp toes. Its head is shaped like that of a vulture, including the hooked beak. Its eyes are multifaceted. It's thought that the hook horror is distantly related to the cockroach or a cave cricket. Hook horrors do not have a smell to humans and demi-humans, but an animal would detect a dry, musty odor. They communicate in a series of clicks and clacks made by the exoskeleton at their throats. In a cave, the eerie sound can echo a long way. They can use this to estimate cavern sizes and distances, much like the sonic radar of a bat. Well, that's cool. That's new and cool. I'm not necessarily going to read the rest to you, but it does talk about their clan like living. It talks about how they have a poor relationship with other races. They don't foolishly attack. They basically so they're not that smart, but they do have animal-like intelligence where they want to preserve their lives, right? So they're not going to just attack something that looks like it might be strong or could actually win a fight, right? So, yeah. What do you think?
I mean, this is definitely the image of the Hook horror, the you know actual drawn image that
Mm-hmm.
I I grew up with, right? And so this level of like weird, distorted looking thing is what has stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really like it. Um, the kind of social perspective on them, I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about really at all. It doesn't
Yeah.
resonate with me.
Right.
Um, and
They just don't feel like the type of creature where you're gonna experience their society. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want them to, I don't want to emphasize how they have young that they protect. That
Right.
is deeply unappealing to me. I
Yeah.
would really much rather that they like represent something, um, you know, conic and horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and that's how I've used them, right? That's what
Yep.
appeals to me about them is that man, there is some weird, weird crap in the Underdark, and it is gonna get you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I feel like this image in particular emphasizes the weird, multi-jointed structure of the arm,
Right.
so
Yep.
that it can just reach and like come whipping around a door or out of a hole or something, and
Mm-hmm.
really dig into you with a hook.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
they don't have maybe a great way to represent that in 2E rules, but
Mm-hmm.
that I think is the interest and the horror of it.
Yeah. They do they also, and I didn't mention it, but it's in the other entries, so I might as well mention it. But it does talk about how they basically their sight is poor, but they have very good, hearing.
Yeah,
But basically it points out that, well, since they're blind anyway, right,
yeah,
then there's no combat penalty for them if they're in complete darkness or blinded or whatever. Um, you know, uh, although it does mention they attack silenced opponents with the penalties that others suffer, right? Because since they're relying on their hearing, if you take that out, it's like blinding them, right? So it kind of focuses in on that and really highlights that, although that's not necessarily a main point of what it used to be in the previous entries, right? The thing I don't like about this, though, it says they're natural climbers because their hooks give them excellent purchase on rock surfaces and they move at normal speed up vertical surfaces. But then it says, oh, but they're so heavy that they can't hang from ceilings like other insects. I would just cross that line out. I don't care about that. They could say
yeah.
whatever they want. This
That's
thing, it's like it's hanging from the ceiling. It's doing weird stuff.
that's
This thing
much
to
more
me
interesting,
in
right?
this image is a bug, right?
Yeah.
This is a
Well,
bug.
and let me tell you, 9 foot tall bugs that will like frenzy attack anything
Right.
that's making a sound, but they
Yeah.
can't really see. So what you have is A Quiet Place, the film series,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Talk about underselling it in this entry,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like
Yep.
that has so much actual horror potential,
Right.
and it's right there in the name, and yet it's still kind of undersold in the text.
Right. Right. Yeah, and it's really it's it's great art, and if you want to imply that insectoid sort of nature of this thing, it makes it even more horrific, right?
Yeah,
And you're right. They undersell it in the text here. The stat block's not really any different. So if somebody knew about hook horrors from the Fiend Folio or from the Quest for the Heartstone, like they understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
But they added 5 more paragraphs to the description about this creature and didn't really do anything to add to it, right? Like, in fact, to me, it's a drawback to talk about, oh, well, they can't hang from the ceiling. Well, really? You want to
Well, sure.
bet? Like,
Sure.
you
I
know,
mean, I think there is not nothing, maybe not enough for the page space, but not nothing gained from the discussion of an animal detected dry, musty odor.
yeah, yeah.
The
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
click-based clicks and
yeah.
clack communication is interesting. Like I said, the sort of social angle, I sort of push back against even the inclusion of that here,
Yeah.
because while I understand that insects are very social, I I do not feel compelled to
Mhm.
protect them in my house most of the time.
Right, right,
They can
right.
stop, especially if
Yep,
they have giant spiky shells that will go through my
right.
shoe.
Yeah,
Jesus.
exactly. Exactly. Well, and I find it interesting because the thing about the sonic radar, that's an interesting way to talk about that.
Yeah.
Even though it actually matches what was before. So that I like. They sort of embellished just the couple of lines from the previous edition's descriptions, and they turned it into something really cool, right? So I think you're right. I think the first 3 paragraphs here and some of the combat stuff, it's really great, right? But yeah, all the social stuff. And what's really funny is I because I always imagined hook horrors as more humanoid than insect, right?
Mm,
I
yeah.
always played them as mostly working in tiny small groups or solitary, not as something that would be like an insect and swarm, right? So this entry here doesn't really speak to me in terms of how I use hook horrors. Of course, I never used them in second edition, right? I only used them in other editions. So that means we can move on to third edition. Now, in third edition, they show up in the Monster Manual 2, not in the Monster Manual 1. So they didn't even rate an entry in the first Monster Manual. Of course, also remember, third edition had 5 official monster manuals, right? And then
Yeah.
also had several different other supplemental monster books, right? So to say it didn't rate an entry in the first one, I mean, I don't know how much of a that's not
Uh,
really a drawback, right?
right, and that initial monster manual is one really densely packed in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like page layout, but yeah, as a result, because they didn't just make the book longer, like give it more
Right.
signatures, they did have to leave a lot of stuff out. This art does not resonate with me as much. It is a vulture-headed distorted thing, but the kind of abdomen and muscular
Yeah.
structure is not an exoskeleton anymore.
It's that same thing they did with the ones Illithid picture, right? They made
Yeah.
them like really muscular looking, and it's kind of like, that's not really
Yeah.
how I envision
Like
those. Same here.
an exoskeleton does not get ripped if you go to the gym, my dude.
Right, exactly. And so they did leave like there is like a carapace thing on the back. It's kind
Yeah.
of not highlighted, but then all the rest of the front of it doesn't really look like carapace covered. I do like 2 things about this picture though. I like the nasty hooks, right? The
Yeah,
nasty
they're
hook
pretty
hands,
wild.
they're gross. I could like lots of different versions of those though. So they're okay. The thing I like about this, they went back to having the vulture eye. Because in the last entry in second edition, they suddenly had multifaceted eyes like an insect because they
Yeah.
made them much more insectoid there. Whereas previously it was head of a vulture, including the eyes were not called out as any different from what a vulture would have, right?
Yeah.
And here they're obviously back to vulture eyes again, not multifaceted eyes. So I like that. But I agree with you. Having a big old muscular, hook horror just doesn't. It's grotesque looking, and I could see where if this was the first hook horror that I had worked with as a DM or as a player, I would probably think that it's pretty nasty and a pretty cool art, right? But because it's so different from what I think of as the hook horror, it just doesn't really speak to me very well.
Right. The sort of art in what I will very euphemistically call the loincloth region um, is also not maybe resonating with me for this creature
Yeah,
because it's sure something.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
I don't know. I don't like that
right. So
because
the
yeah,
humanoid art from the early editions had sort of the Ken doll effect in the
yeah,
groin area, right? And in second edition, it because it's so insectoid, you're not even really like it's just there is no region there, like there's no real groin region in the insect, right?
right.
So you're not thinking about it, right? And so yeah, just looking at the art, yeah. So third edition really is where they that's kind of one of those places where they were trying to keep the kind of carapace
Yeah,
insectoid
just
style, but
it,
yeah.
it draws the eye more than one might like. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yes.
Um, so
But instead of being like, wow, that's great art, you're thinking, what am I looking at?
what am I looking at? So uh, there are some things to absolutely love about this stat block, though.
Okay.
Whatever I ever say about the art. Um, so it does call out that they make a point of ambushing foes from above,
Nice.
um, and they are willing to retreat by scaling the walls because they have a climb speed. They're not super fast, right? It's not that hard to
Mm-hmm.
chase them down, and 65 hit points is not nothing, but it's not amazingly scary. Like their
Right.
CR6, asking 65 hit points to last real long is maybe not realistic.
Right.
22 AC is admittedly more daunting, but
So basically they exchanged having a big giant bag of hit points for having the ability to have a good AC because that carapace is real hard, man.
yep, about right. Um, the other thing is we talked about like you really want the hook to grab something. That's what hooks do. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they address that here, right? It has improved grab as a special attack. Uh, if it hits, it deals damage and automatically attempts to start a grapple. This maybe regrettably means that you get funneled into the third edition grappling rules. Um,
Yeah.
God love you, but they did the best they could. Uh,
Look, I know I have heard a lot over the year. Now, I didn't play very much third edition, but I've heard a lot over the years about how grappling in third edition was so broken. It slowed the game to a crawl. It was just absolutely horrible, and it needed something else.
all of that is true.
And I will tell you, the first edition grapple rules were not that great either.
The
Okay.
first edition, so I think we might have covered this at one point
Yeah.
in the
The
show, really
adjudication
early.
is just such a
It's a
weird, like,
nightmare.
yeah, it's a horrible nightmare.
First ed, second ed, and third ed are all awful,
Yeah.
just awful.
Yeah.
Uh, then 4E is very light, unless you're specifically playing a brawler. Guys, I know
Hmm.
I'm off topic. All right, this is Sam's fault. He did
No, it's
this to
fine.
me. Um, uh, the brawler is sort of your one way to go from grappling is a thing you could do, but like why exactly? To
Right.
oh, this is
Okay.
amazing. This is
Okay.
it's completely rules, and it's all
Yeah.
contained in the brawler's particular powers. And
Okay.
then 5e grappling is basically fine. Like it it works pretty well. It stays pretty light. I can run it off the top of my head without having to look a lot of stuff up. I really like
Hmm.
that.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So we can see Power Sunder, which it's really good at breaking your stuff. This is horrible. Don't this PCs hate it when their stuff gets destroyed. PCs
Yeah.
don't actually enjoy destroying an enemy's stuff
Hmm.
because like basically every alignment is against the player in that situation. Either they're destroying
Right.
treasure or their treasure is getting destroyed, and there's just not a lot of feels good possibility there. So I don't love Power Sunder. Uh,
So, how much damage does Power Sunder do?
so it does double damage if it hits your object with one of its attacks. But the key thing is that it doesn't provoke an opportunity attack
Right. But it
when
just
it
does
does
its
that.
regular, like it's when it says double damage, it's not like a specific power sunder damage. It's just its regular whatever damage it's doing, but it does
Yes,
double
correct.
because it was doing a power sunder. Okay,
That's
got
right.
it.
And your item might have a damage threshold that it's got to get past or whatever.
Okay.
But
Okay.
if you're not specifically using a magic longsword or magic shield, its chances of absolutely ruining your weapon right in the face are very high. On
Right.
the other hand,
Okay.
it's CR6.
Yeah.
You might very
Right.
well have a magic sword or
Yeah.
shield. This is
Right.
third ed. And then it gets rending bite,
In fact,
which
if you're fighting a CR6 creature and you don't have at least one magic item, I'd say somebody's doing something wrong.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
Um, and that pressure on the DM to hand out magic items on a schedule was
Right.
a major
Yeah.
feels bad for me as third ed went on.
Right.
Not that I don't like handing out magic items, just I don't like the sense of a ticking clock.
Right. Yeah. It's the keeping up with the Joneses part of it that is
Yes.
the hard thing to deal with. Yeah.
Then it has rending bite. Going back to that grab thing, if you're grabbed, it says can automatically bite a grabbed foe. So I think that means it auto
No
hits,
attack roll.
no
Yeah.
attack roll, and it does this insane amount of damage.
Right.
Uh, 3d6 plus 10, so an average of 21 damage
Yeah. That's
is
good.
that's serious business.
Yeah.
In any edition of D&D up until uh, you know, something higher than sixth level, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Then we have
Yeah.
blind sight and light sensitivity. Um, so that's all fine.
Yeah.
Um,
And it focuses on the, it keeps that silence negating some of
yep.
its abilities to do things and talks about how it doesn't have to even make spotter listen checks, because it can notice you through it. So that's good because it carries in from the previous thing.
Yep. And for a fine example of just grapple being overcomplicated, if you look at the column inches dedicated just to improved grab, uh,
Hmm.
it's a lot.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, anyway, uh, the it's got a real solid attack bonus with its claws, pretty okay attack bonus with its bite. So that auto hit situation, if you're grabbed, is a real nice benefit to it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Creates a very much a time pressure to get it get you out of that grapple for sure.
Right.
Um, Great AC. Um, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um,
So it does one thing that I noticed up here. It does talk about subterranean areas. It talks about underground areas where hook horrors dwell echo with the constant clacking and scraping sounds of their hooks against the stone. Talks about their size, powerfully built arms, right? Head resembling a vulture with a monstrous beak, torso shaped like a beetle's body, even though the picture shows it all swole like it worked out in the gym all the time. It talks about their family groups, blah blah blah, and then it gets down here to hook horrors speak undercommon.
Bit weird.
So, but later on, it talks about in the blind sight. It says they emit a high frequency sound inaudible to most other creatures, bounces off. Oh, so that's just its echo thing. So, in none of the other editions was this thing able to communicate.
Yeah.
So for me, like
Except
giving
yeah.
it undercommon
Except with
feels
its
weird.
clacks and clicks, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right,
No,
right. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean,
I
with a language produced
yeah,
in a vocal box, right?
I agree that giving it, anything resembling a larynx is a strange move.
Yeah, yeah. But like in third edition, is that like typical to like is it typical for creatures that have like a humanoid shape? Even though this is technically an aberration, right? But it has a humanoid kind of shape, and it has a weird like whatever because it's always described as like a vulture-like head with a humanoid kind of body with insectoid features with a carapace and whatnot. So in third edition, is it just common for every creature to be able to speak something?
No,
Okay.
not it isn't somehow innately common. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, there are plenty of things that can't speak.
Hmm.
Golems spring to mind,
Okay. Yeah.
right? No,
I'm just
it's
curious why they might choose to do that. And I was wondering if there was just any sort of underlying thing where, oh, well, every creature kind of gets the ability to communicate with something, right? Like,
there's nothing obvious to me.
yeah.
Uh, my interpretation is that there was a designer who wrote this who had an idea, and the editor wasn't like, yeah, we're not doing that. Um,
Okay.
I do also like
Yeah.
the idea of their advancement uh, to more hit dice at large or 16 to 30 hit dice for huge,
Okay.
because like growing one of these guys to huge and making them a huge, horrible, mutated hook horror, that is pretty fun. That's pretty
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also interesting, and it's partly why I mentioned when I talked about the first listing in the Fiend Folio that it calls it a large creature because it's 9 feet tall. Because in first edition, that was a large creature.
yeah,
But by the time we get to third edition, we sort of standardize things to kind of a medium size, right?
yeah,
Like
for sure.
and that carries through into fourth edition and fifth edition, whatever. And so it's interesting that okay, so normally it's kind of medium average size,
Uh,
but
I
then
mean, no, it's
as
a
it
large aberration.
advances,
It's a large
oh
aberration.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's large to begin with, right? Oh,
yeah,
you're right, you're right. Okay, so when it advances, it stays large until you get to 16, and then it's huge. Okay,
that's right.
I got it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it is
uh,
large. Okay.
and that's pretty normal for the advancement line. It'll
Okay.
stay at its current size for some more hit dice, and then kick up to the next size category.
Okay.
Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and I, I've mentioned this before, but let me just tell you, working out the math for tacking on those extra hit dice,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then handling the math of the size change to huge is not Smiles times. It's
Right.
just a headache and a half. I love the potential that it represents, but the actual practice is not fun.
Yeah. 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 That's too bad. Ready to move on to fourth?
Uh, Actually, I want to say one tiny last thing.
Sure.
It's really easy to miss they have this because it's easy to miss all the monster feats, but they have cleave and power attack. That's the
Mm.
thing you can do.
Okay.
You probably don't want to, but you could.
Yeah. The power of this thing is in the grab, right?
Yep. Yes, some of its power is in, man, a plus 13 attack bonus with two
Right.
claws is not a joke.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and like if it's going to get a free hit with its beak anyway,
Hmm.
cool. I guess I'm power attacking for all of it. Let's
Right.
go.
Right.
If I don't hit with anything else, your ass is still toast.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Is
now I'm done.
improved trip good in third edition? Like, what's that? Is that something that would be a good tactic for a creature
Uh,
like this?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to result in provoking a lot of extra attacks for opportunity as
Okay.
something tries to get up.
Right.
So that's incredible. That's a lot
Yeah.
of potential free damage and a lot
Right.
of stickiness, right? A lot
Okay.
of tactical
Yep.
stickiness. Um, and like, oh, you're on the ground? Cool. I guess I'm gonna have a much easier time taking with my bite because
Right.
now I have plus two to hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Screwed, bud.
Okay.
Like, if they're actually being kind of pack predators, as this suggests, but you don't always see in real implementation, then
Right.
improved trip is awful news for the player.
Yeah. Right.
Awful
Okay. Yeah. What's the B mean next to it?
bonus.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a bonus feat. Uh, this just we decided that hook horrors are like this rather
Right.
than this coming from hit die advancement.
Got it. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I kind of like the way that they expanded out the abilities, and it
Yeah,
still retains its sort of essence of being a hook horror,
yeah,
but has some fancy things.
yeah. I feel like it's
So,
getting some tactical interest, and that's nice to
yeah.
see.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Uh,
some things are really cool, but then they get to third edition and they don't have a ton of tactical. Like, remember the gelatinous cube, right? really cool, but the tactical abilities of that creature are very reduced, right? So it's kind of a once it's discovered, you kind of okay, it loses all of its tactical abilities, right? Once you know it's there. So what do you do, right? Whereas this is completely tactically viable through its entire, you know, time on the battle map, basically, which is really good.
Yep.
All right, let's move to fourth edition.
Oh
In
yeah.
fourth edition, it makes an appearance in the first monster manual.
Uh, so I would start by saying that its positioning as a level 13 soldier uh, is it probably a substantial part of why it rates appearance in the first monster manual. I think it
Mm-hmm.
probably fills a
Mm-hmm.
gap for them, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Um, and if you didn't play fourth edition, I will tell you what everyone who just heard me say level 13 soldier is thinking. Oh my God, this needs to be such a pain in the ass to fight. So much AC.
Right.
It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be just, and yeah, it has 28 AC, which, okay, you have to understand 4E AC scaling. That's
Mm-hmm.
really high,
Right.
uh, out until quite late levels of the game.
Right.
It's going to do good damage. It's going to, like, mess with your tactical formation, which
Mm-hmm.
it does. Um,
Yep.
and just soldiers are not going to do the most damage. That's brutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or artillery.
Right.
But they're going to be some of the worst things you have to face in the battlefield just because they have the staying power to like keep on being a problem and some of your best attacks that burn through their hit points fast aren't going to hit
Yeah.
unless you stacked up a bunch of bad stuff on them.
Right. And this particular soldier actually has some controller aspects because when you
Yep.
look at what its powers do, its hook attack, which is an at-will attack, it can do every round. It has reach, and if it hits you, it can pull its target, so it can pull it closer to it. Now, if it makes two of those hook attacks, okay, it can do them at a penalty to hit. However, if they both hit the same target, they do extra damage and automatically grab the target. Okay. And if you're a grabbed target, it has a really good bite attack against you.
Yep.
But also it has an interesting fling attack that says it can attack you and then do a bunch of damage and then slide you 3 squares and knock you prone. So it's kind of the combination of that improved trip and
Yep.
the grabbing with the hook thing from third edition, right? Pretty cool and interesting if you have the right setup and the right kind of mix of elements on the battlefield here in fourth edition, you could probably take 2 or 3 of these hook horrors and make for a really, really dynamic fight
Yep.
just because of their movement.
Yeah, the encounter groups that they're proposing are very much about that. You'll
Mm-hmm.
see that they are pairing them. They pair 3 hook horrors with 1 Balanoth, which is an elite lurker.
Right.
Soldiers and lurkers work together really well, and just
Yep.
that they ruin lives. Um, and then you've got 1 hook horror as sort of the team tank, paired with 2 Grimlock Berserkers that are brutes, and
Mm-hmm.
then a Beholder Eye of Flame that's elite artillery. So that's, the brutes and the soldier are soaking up a ton of damage, while the elite artillery is just doing whatever the hell it wants.
Right. Yep.
And that is awful for the players. Now, the players have some amazing stuff at 13th level. Do not get
Oh,
me
sure.
wrong.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But just like run correctly by the DM. This is a very thorny tactical puzzle.
Yep. Yep. Now, once you can figure it out, and with a few good rolls,
Yeah.
you could take this thing, right?
Oh, for
But
sure.
if it takes you 2 rounds to figure out, okay, where do we need to be placed so that we can basically out strategize this encounter group, you're going to hurt for those couple of rounds because they're going to throw you all around and
Yeah,
do a
I
ton of
mean,
damage while they're doing it.
it does need to be said that the hook horror's slow speed is still
Uh,
a significant
yeah.
presence and a drawback.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
like 40 honestly cares about small distinctions in speed values more than a lot of other editions. Um,
Yeah.
just because, I mean, if you're going to lean into grid-based tactical play, I mean, I guess
Hmm.
there you are, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's true. They do have reach though, and they
They
can
do.
pull
Yep.
and slide. So, it that's offsetting that a tiny bit, but not a huge amount. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now in the flavor text here, it does mention that they communicate using a complex series of clicking noises they make with their mouths and carapace. So now it can include all of that, right? Um, the eerie clicks echo in the Underdark, warning prey that death is near. It does not talk about them clicking things with their actual hooks, but that's fine. The knowledge here that you can learn is they live in total darkness. They can see in lit environments, but the dark of the deep earth they can navigate using echolocation. They make clicking noise to communicate with each other. They That's how you tell that they're around, is you listen for those clicks, right? They hunt in small packs. They can also gather in large groups. Blah blah blah. It gives you some of their social information that, as we already discussed, isn't really, they're still kind of insectoid in nature, so it doesn't really. So let's just scroll down a tiny bit and talk about the hook horror art here. It's very similar to the third edition, except they got rid of the sort of pectoral muscle, arm muscle, like
Yeah.
completely rocked out abs. They
Yeah.
kind of have a tiny bit, but it looks more like an insect. But
Yeah.
they did keep the vulture head and they kept the vulture eyes. So
And they
that's
kept the
interesting.
the third ed hook structure,
Yeah, yeah, the
like
really
the
long.
very
Yeah.
long serrated
Hmm.
hooks.
Yep.
Um, and that's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
like this pretty well. Um,
Yeah.
and they've got kind of a talon foot structure that
Hmm.
is sort of strange,
They
but
had it in third edition as
they
well.
did.
So if we go back
Yeah,
to
they did.
that, and it's
That's right.
more like we're gonna suddenly decide to give you like vulture feet,
Uh-huh.
kinda. Again, it's because they had purely insectoid feet in second edition,
Yep.
and in first edition they had more like humanoid feet with some
Right.
claws.
And before that, it's sort of a weird cat-like paw
Yeah, yeah.
situation.
It's like, yeah, exactly. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of odd that they kept that, but
I don't
I,
dislike it. It's fine.
yeah, it's okay.
Uh,
I'm not
I at
a
least
yes or a no on that. So
so the one thing I like is that I can at least believe that those talons can cause clicks
right, yeah, yep, yeah, for sure,
as maybe their primary like Foley.
yeah,
That's kind of cool. Like that.
yeah.
Um,
I could imagine this thing using its arm hooks, its massive arm hooks, holding onto something, and it just clicks on the walls with its talon feet,
yeah.
which is creepy and scary. Um, I think this is the only place where the hook horror is in a actual book release for fourth edition. I don't think it made it into the Monster Vault, which is sad because I would have liked to seen an update because this is the first monster manual, and as you know, they did updates in the third monster manual, and they kind of fiddled with the math a little bit. So I would be curious to see what an updated hook horror would look like, but this is the only entry that it gets in fourth edition. So
I
I
mean,
guess that's
in
just the
fairness,
way it
it's pretty
goes.
effective. I think
Yeah, it
this would
is.
work pretty well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do like it. I do like it. And that leads us to fifth edition. If you're ready to move on.
Yeah.
So this is the 2014 Monster Manual. The art is interesting. It gives you there's a couple of little sketches, and then it gives you the sort of full color version.
Yep.
The feet are back to more. It still has like reptile scales, kind of like the talon scales, but the
Yeah,
feet shape and the toe shape is more like the cat again with the claw. So
a little
very
bit. Yeah,
interesting there.
yeah.
Yeah, they kept the big hooks. It's got a really thick neck, more so than it did before, and it still retains the vulture head. So very interesting art there. Here's what it says. Fierce predator of the Underdark, the hook horror aggressively defends its hunting grounds. Subterranean caverns where these creatures dwell echo with constant clacking and scraping of their hooks as they wend their way up cliffs and along cavern walls. Has a head resembling a vulture's, the torso of an enormous beetle with an exoskeleton studded by sharp, bony protuberances. Gains its name from its long, powerfully built arms and legs, which end in wickedly curved, hooked claws. They communicate by striking their hooks against their exoskeletons or the stone surfaces around them. What sounds to others like random clacking noises actually is a complex language that only hook horrors understand. That's interesting.
Yep. Languages, hook horror.
Right. Yeah. That's yeah. Yeah. Very cool. I like that. I like that.
Well,
That's
it
really
means
nice.
that you could cast comprehend languages and know what they're saying,
Yep. Yep.
or
Exactly. Yep.
tongues.
And so let's take a look at the stats. We have a large monstrosity. It is neutral, so it's not an aberration. Okay.
Uh,
15 armor class, which is halfway decent for this is a challenge 3, so it's a CL3 creature in 5th edition,
yeah.
which is kind of a downgrade
It does
from.
bring them way down. Um, it oddly, it's sort of it lands on CR3 by preserving some of the other math that we've seen, more or
Mhm.
less.
Right.
I mean, it's dropped their strength from 24 in third ed to 18, but that's a
Mhm.
fairly normal rescale
Right.
for how fifth ed thinks about stats compared to how third ed thinks about stats.
Mhm.
Their speed's improved. They don't have that like slower than an ordinary person speed
Right.
anymore.
Right.
Um,
They lose an attack. They go back to having only 2 attacks.
right,
They
and
lose their mouth attack or their beak attack.
yeah, that's a weird move to me. I I almost feel like I'd rather see one hook, one beak,
Yeah.
just to sort of sell the image. But I think probably a little bit more than that. I would rather see them kicked up, back up to a CR of around 6. And
Right.
yes, you can have both of your hook attacks, and a beak, and your hooks can do something horrible to the PCs. That's fine.
Right.
Just off the cuff.
Right.
Uh,
So then that begs the question then for me, do they actually upgrade it in the 2024 Monster Manual?
oh no, no. So, in writing the 2024 Monster Manual, one of the things they can't ever change is CR, because if
Mm,
they do, they lose backward compatibility with adventures.
right. Right.
Now, a CR can kind of mean something different. So,
Hmm.
like, CRs north of 10 are more robust than they used to be.
Okay.
But that's because if you played a lot of 5e, you kind of know that the CRs stop really working satisfyingly above, about level 10.
Right.
Uh, to the
Right.
extent that they work well before level 10. So in 2024, their lore section is a bit briefer, but there's not that much to trim down, frankly. And to perceive their surroundings, hook horrors echolocate via a range of noises, from banging on rocks in their own bodies to vocalizations that sound like strange squawks, screams, or clicks. Only hook horrors know the meaning of these noises. So yeah,
Interesting.
their AC hit points and sort of most of their attack situation are the same, except that with the hook attack, if the target is a larger or smaller creature, the hook horror moves the target 5 feet straight toward or away from itself.
Hmm.
So it can use the
Interesting.
hooks to close distance or create distance.
Cool. I like that. That's a
They've
callback to the 3rd edition.
Yeah, so they've dropped echolocation uh, because that is the kind of like qualifier trait that they really, really worked to get rid of
Right.
in 2024. They also got rid of keen hearing and just factored that into their perception bonus. They now
Right.
have expertise in perception functionally. I will say that I think that getting rid of things like echolocation is, as a trait, is wrong. I think it is just incorrect because it really cuts out a lot of like potential for changing up an encounter in an unexpected way.
Right.
And it puts it on the DM to, you know, decide, oh yeah, that spell can shut down my encounter. That's fine. I don't. This is where I think that 2024 monsters really abandon narrative in a painful way.
And what's also crappy about that is that's kind of one of the defining things about this creature,
It
right?
really is. Yeah.
So to remove it from effectively the lore, right?
Yep.
Right, means that you're changing how that creature is used by any future DM.
Right. Like they're still described as echolocating in the lore block, but there's no mention that it can't use its blind sight well deafened.
Right.
That's just not there. The art is pretty wild.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so it's a half page art. Um, they've changed the structure of the hooks again,
Huh.
and it's back to being more muscular. It's I mean, my dude skipped leg day a lot too much, but I mean, he can bench.
Yeah.
Holy hell, can he bench?
Yeah.
And if he could lift the bar, which of course he can't, he has hooks for hands. Um, but the hooks are these enormous, like inward curving. There's sort of a scythe blade situation happening here, or sort of a sickle blade thing, except that it is like it looks really thick and heavy rather than the sort of 2E sickle blade, but it looks light and fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like this is presented like running down an adventurer in a cave, an adventurer who is probably a Dwergar. Yeah,
Hmm.
almost certainly a Dwergar. And
But his
he's definitely about to get got.
yeah, I agree. The hook is actually like an actual meat hook.
Yeah.
It has a steep curve, right?
Yeah.
Rather than an elongated thing with a curve at the end. It's sort of the whole thing is curved. Very
Uh,
interesting.
but yeah, this is the other thing I'll say about this is that you commented on how there weren't any other hook horror variants in fourth.
Hmm.
Uh, I would love to see some hook horror variants in fifth. Maybe
Yeah.
we're talking about, a huge variant that is, again, weirdly mutated by the Underdark or whatever. Like in my Orakesh campaign, the PCs were in a dungeon that had a bunch of weird stuff. Like there was a blood river, and they fought vampires that were standing in the river of blood. So the vampires had free regeneration as long as they stood in the river of blood, which was all about making the PCs use either forced movement or spells that prevent healing. And they wound up winning that fight on the strength of chill touch, which I did
Nice.
not expect but absolutely loved.
Right. Right.
Is raw healing denial as a fight tactic. You do not see that very often. Anyway, they had been in this fight and then they heard these noises coming from the pit that the river of blood was pouring into,
Mm.
and a a hook horror, which I described as more like huge, clambered its way out of the pit with its hooks, and they did not like that. They did not like that one bit. That was bad times.
Nice.
Um, so by that I of course mean it was a fun scene and fun fight. I think
Yeah.
that's a PC they had to rescue from a cage hanging over that pit too, just to
Mm.
really make it awful. But
So
yeah,
I got curious and I went to look to see if there was any other, because remember I said maybe it's in the Book of Vile Darkness or something. Turns out there is a rotting hook horror, which is also a level 13 soldier in Adventure P2, which is the second Paragon adventure that they released. There's a Shadow Hook Horror, also a 13 level soldier in Dungeon 163. There is a Hook Horror Dark Fiend, which is a 14th level lurker in the
Wow.
Underdark book. Yeah, in the Underdark book. And then there's an Elder Hook Horror in Dungeon 204, which is a level 23 soldier.
Get
I have to
wrecked.
go look that up real quick.
Yes, please.
So three Elder Hook Horrors, level 23 soldier, massive hit points, hooked claw, massive escape DC. Slide the target up to 5 squares and falls prone. That's the fling for this thing.
Yeah.
Whew. It has reflexive claw. An enemy willingly moves while within 2 squares of the hook horror. The hook horror uses hooked claw against the triggering enemy. Hooked claw does 3d8 plus 18 damage. and
Yeah.
grabs. And grabs.
Yeah. It's such a free opportunity to, you know,
Yeah.
be sticky, right?
Yep.
It's like the soldier is there to defend. It wants to be sticky. It wants to stop you
Yep.
from going where you want to go.
Oh, the Underdark. I wanted to look at the Underdark. Okay, level 14 Lurker. Horror's
Ooh.
Pounce. The Hook Horror Dark Fiend charges and makes the following attack in place of a melee basic. Plus 19 versus AC, 2d12 plus 6 damage. If it has combat advantage, it deals an extra 2d12. Yeah,
I mean
close burst.
that is some
Yeah.
lurker nonsense right there. I love it.
Look at the Shriek of the Horror. Close blast 5. Targets enemies only. 3d6 plus 6 damage, and you're immobilized and deafened. Fiend's
Yeah.
Darkness, Close Burst 2. This power creates a zone of darkness that remains in place until the end of the Dark Fiend's next turn. The zone blocks line of sight for anything that doesn't have blind sight, and any creature entirely within the area is blinded. While inside the zone, the Dark Fiend itself is hidden from those creatures, gaining combat advantage. So it it puts a plume of darkness around everything, and then it womps on you, basically.
Yep. Well,
It has a
it's
speed of 6,
yeah,
also.
it very much wants to use that to like move out of and
Mm-hmm.
hit you and then like bail if it needs to or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 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 interesting. It doesn't have reach
No.
with Horror's Pounce, so
It
it's
does with
only with
regular
a
hook,
hook.
but
Yeah.
yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This Underdark is actually an early 4E book, but it's one of my favorite books for fourth
Yeah.
edition.
I
Yeah.
remember hearing it was really good.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever picked that one up.
It was really they did a really good job. I just wanted to look up that other yeah. There's 5 hook horrors in fourth edition, but that 23rd level Elder Hook horror is massive though.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think that combining some standard soldier hook horrors and some of these
Hmm.
lurker hook horrors really like finishes delivering the sort of pack tactics. You know, some of us are really sticky, and some of us are doing hit and run. That's great.
Right.
That's a
Yep.
huge pain in the ass, and I mean that in a positive, like
Yeah.
gameplay challenge sense.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Uh, for the people who like 4E, that's probably a significant part of why they like 4E. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, Basically, you have these puzzles that are created in an emergent way by the GM, and then the players, are set to solve it. And the GM is not saying that they've worked out a solution, just that one is probably available.
Hmm. Right. Yep.
All right. Uh,
Yeah. So this is an interesting creature to me because of how it shows up originally in the hollowed pages of White Dwarf magazine way back in 79 or 80, and then makes it into the Fiend Folio, and then somehow gets backported into Beckme, but only because there was an inked deal with LJN to make an action figure, and then by the time you get to second edition, the sort of the way that thing looks is completely different. and then also again in third edition looks very different, and then also again in fourth. It's gone through more sort of cosmetic changes, but there's really not been very many mechanical changes while there's been a lot of cosmetic changes. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of these creatures that we've been looking at and taking deep dives into, if there's been like cosmetic change, it's because something in the stat block changed or something about the lore changed or was elucidated a little bit more. It went into more detail, and the artist sort of could use that to add to the image in a lot of ways, right? In this case, though, it's like if you look at the second edition Hook Horror, it's a very different beast from the third edition, the first edition, right? Like,
Yeah.
those creatures could be totally different creatures.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that to me, every part of the creature's like design and function is so dubiously logical that it all needs to flow from this is Underdark mutation, beginning, middle, and end. We're not going to try to sort of explain it, but all of these different looks are valid because they've mutated in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is sort of the rhetorical approach I would take to that.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like this actually isn't a complaint from me. It's just one of those interesting sort
Yeah.
of things that happens sometimes because some of the creatures that we cover, they stay basically the same, right? In terms of the art, right?
You're telling me the gelatinous cube hasn't changed much in the art, Sam?
I mean, sometimes it's really big.
What about the invisible stalker, would you say?
That one actually has many forms. We just don't see it.
Huh. 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 Okay.
Um, but so I had a lot of,
Citation needed.
yeah.
Let's say
Sorry.
citation
Yes.
needed.
Well, we better put Invisible Stalker on our list.
Well, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah. Right.
Or
Well, I
not
think
see, as
that
case may be.
yeah, or we won't see. That's correct. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, you can't prove a negative. Anyway. Uh, so yeah, so I think that brings us to the end. I had a lot of fun going back into my materials and looking up sort of the origins of this, and yeah, this was a good one for me. If only because it's so bizarre and the art is so interesting and diverse, and the introduction of this creature and then backporting it into Beckme, like that doesn't happen very often. And so I find it very interesting. And so, dear listeners, thank you so much for listening to me just fanboy out on this creature that I have liked for many decades. And with that, Brandis, sir, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky at brandisstoddard@bsky.social. You can find me on the Tome Show Discord. And my personal blog is Brandis Stoddard, and my Patreon is my personal blog is brandisstoddard.com. I should say the whole thing, and then my Patreon is Brandis Stoddard. How about you, Sam?
You can find me on rpgmusings.com and on the Tome Show Discord, and I am on Blue Sky at DM Samuel and all that. I'm just DM Samuel everywhere. It's fine. And we hope that you are enjoying this holiday series, and we'll talk to you next time.